So in this episode, I want to talk about Peter F. Drucker, the management guru from the 20th century, on management. Drucker literally wrote the book on management. Actually, he wrote 39 books on management, and he's chock full of wisdom. Here, I'm going to go over 15 of his best quotes about management and business. Stay tuned.
You are listening to The Leadersmith, Darren Gerdes.
So as I was saying, Drucker literally wrote the book on management, and I'm going to go over 15 of his best quotes among his, I think, 39 books on the topic of management or business in general. Now, if you like this episode, I did another episode that's a little longer on leadership, and I'm going to be doing some others on his wit and humor and great ideas. So look up and down on the list of my episodes if you want to get more of that. So let's start here with the purpose of a business. The purpose of a business, said Drucker, is to create a customer. Now, if we get that wrong, everything else falls out of kilter because we start thinking, oh, it's to do good, it's to do this, it's to do that, it's for this purpose. No, the purpose of business is to create a customer. If you're doing anything other than creating a customer, you're not focused on what you need to be doing. And that's really important, particularly as this current generation growing into business has a very social view of what business should be. And that's okay. You can do a social thing, but that's not a business. That's a social activity. That's a place in Drucker's mind for nonprofits or something like a B corporation, which is becoming a trend. And there's nothing wrong with doing those things. But if you're in business, be in business, do the business. And the purpose of that business is to create a customer. That's your proof that this is something that you should be engaging in. Okay, number two, whenever you see a successful business, someone once made a courageous decision. Now, I like that quote because it seems like our governmental leaders don't understand all the planning that goes into making business work. We can just shut down, no problem. As if, there's just so much problems that comes from that kind of attitude where you don't realize, like, just think about a Snickers bar. How much planning, you're going to trade your dollar for a Snickers bar. How much planning had to go into finding the resources for the materials, developing the Snickers bar itself, the packaging, the manufacturing, the marketing, the shipping, all those things went into that dollar that you just spent. And it's not a dollar's worth. It's a lot, but it's diffused by those dollars, and that's what makes the business by doing so many Snickers bar sales, that's what makes the business successful. But there's so much planning and decision making that goes into it. We discount that. We take it for granted. But whenever you see a successful business, someone once made a courageous decision or many decisions that went into that. Number three, management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things. Now, I put this over in the management camp as opposed to the leadership discussion that I had in a different episode, but this is a good example of the difference between leadership and management. Management is doing things right, and here we're talking about efficiency, right? Trying to make sure you're doing it as well as possible. Leadership is doing the right things, and you need both. Leadership is deciding what those right things are and pursuing those. What's truly our North Star. But then once you do that, you need managers to make sure that you're doing the activities to get you there as efficiently as possible. The next one, efficiency, is doing better what is already being done. So if we know what needs to be done, we need to, let's use that Snickers bar analogy, we need to manufacture it, or we need to package it or distribute it more efficiently than we're doing now. Well, what are we doing now? Let's say we're going door to door. Well, is there a better way? Yes, we send it to wholesalers who already have a system. And so that's what efficiency is. It's making sure that you're doing the thing as optimally as possible. Now, Drucker has this interesting quote here about concentration. Concentration is the key to economic results. No other principle of effectiveness is violated as constantly today as the basic principle of concentration. Now, this has application in organizations, but I think it also has application in your life. What is the thing that you need to be focused on that will give you outsized growth or outsized results? Focus on it, focus on it, focus on it. That's the key to economic results. Next, managers are action focused. They are not philosophers and should not be. So, I don't fault managers for not wanting to sit around and think great thoughts about management. That's kind of what I do. I sit around and think great thoughts about this thing. I read voraciously. I'm trying to absorb as much as I can. But managers are in a different position. They have to get results now. They have to get work done through people immediately. So they have to be action focused and make sure that things are getting done. The order of the day is execute, not think great thoughts. So I'm not faulting them for that, but they don't need to be philosophers, nor should they be. Next, there's nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. I love that quote. There's nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. Look, if you're doing a task that doesn't need to be done, it doesn't add any value to anybody, don't do it. Don't do it efficiently. Just stop doing it and move on to doing something that needs to be done. Next, most discussions of decision making assume that only senior executives make decisions or that only senior executive decisions matter. That is a dangerous mistake. That's exactly right, because you have to have leadership trickle down through the organization. And I know we're talking about management, not leadership. Let's assume that they're the same for right now. You have to be responsible for your unit, and somebody who's above you has to be responsible for them, and then the person at the top, whatever, they're responsible for the whole. But your unit, you have to make sure that you're dealing with your decisions as they come properly right now. It's dangerous to think it only matters at the top, because then you enfeeble those below you. Next, plans are only good intentions unless they immediately degenerate into hard work. I love the way he turns that phrase. Plans are only good intentions unless they immediately degenerate into hard work. Look, you can plan all day, but planning is all theoretical until there's action, until there's execution, until you actually work the plan. So don't fool yourself into thinking, oh, I worked really hard on this plan. You haven't begun to work hard. You've only created the plan, and unless you have the plan work you, nothing's happened. Next, if you have more than 5 goals, you have none. And I talked about this a little bit in the earlier quote, so I'm not going to belabor it. But look, you can't diffuse yourself into too little focus. Think about the difference between a laser beam and maybe a broad flashlight that's going everywhere and you can see all around you. The laser beam can cut through steel. The broad flashlight, well, it'll help you see, but it's not going to cut through steel. You need to be focused, focused, focused. And if you have more than 5 goals, and I said 3, I would limit it to 3. But if you have more than 5 goals, you really have none. If you have priorities, you must have posteriorities. Okay, next, so much of what we call management consists in making it difficult for people to work. How about that? Well, we do things that we have extra meetings and we add activities. When COVID hit, I was surprised by how many meetings we canceled that we didn't actually have to do. And on the other side of it, I was thinking, wow, I hope we never go back to having to do all those extra things that we didn't have to do before. We had to do these things before because somebody somewhere in a management position was trying to justify his position. And that's unfortunate. We shouldn't have to do that. Next, executives owe it to the organization and to their fellow workers not to tolerate non-performing individuals in important jobs. And that's right. That sounds just like Jim Collins talking about, look, if you don't get rid of the guy that's dragging you down, if you don't get rid of somebody who's really not pulling their weight, all the A players are going to leave because they see that and it's not fair. Next, objectives are not fate. They are direction. They are not commands. They are commitments. They do not determine the future. They are means to mobilize the resources and energies of the business for the making of the future. So don't confuse objectives with must-dos. We had objectives before COVID, but guess what? When COVID hit, our objectives changed. Our objectives became, let's survive, rather than we have to do that thing and this thing, and wouldn't it be nice to do that thing? Just remember, your objectives are just guiding stars. They're not set in stone. And then finally this, strategy is a commodity. Execution is an art. Anybody can sit around and strategize, but to execute, to really get it done, well, that's where the money is. That's where it's important to execute, execute, execute. All right. Hey, thanks for your time. Thanks for listening to this episode. I hope one or more of those ideas triggered a thought, and I have a bonus for you. The surprise is if you click on the link below, I have all these quotes. In fact, I have one more in a bonus on a website. You just follow the link and you can just grab any of those quotes. Thanks for listening. I hope this helps you become the kind of leader that you would want to follow.